So I was telling you that I'm collaborating with Serge, which is a family therapist, and two other, Caroline and Nicolas, and Dunia Bouzard, who was responsible for the very early concern in France about radicalization in the Muslim community, although now it's all over the communities. So what I want to do is some comment, very personal one from the literature I know, and I will briefly introduce about thinking just for a moment about suicide, because we are talking about killing others, you know, with this phenomenon, but there is also another irrational phenomenon, which is killing oneself, which is very common in psychiatry, and there is a lot of research about that, and I think it's inspiring to see where we are about the understanding of suicide. Then I will try to give you some input regarding this very common ideas that adolescence is changing, that maybe we are engaging in a new era in terms of societies. And then I will go to my focus, which is who are the French youth joining Daesh, from what we are able to say about them, and what are the mechanisms to catch them, although some of them have been, and the motivation as well. Also, some of them have already been discussed this morning, a little bit far from their context, but anyway. And in the conclusion, I'll propose very, very limited aspect about what can we do, because we are very inexperimented till now. So just as an introduction, the numbers. So we are, although we can do historical comparison with some phenomenon, and that has been said this morning, but in some ways we are in some kind of epidemic phenomenon. So on the left you have, I think that Itzhak sent us this editorial in Nature when he proposed the symposium, and on the right this is the French data, the recent one, and the black one are the attempts that were blocked by the police. So it's not in the media, I mean. This is military information, actually. And I just want, this is a very recent review in the Lancet about suicide, and I'd like to comment not about all these, because when you looked at the slides and at the paper, you feel that there is a lot of neuroscience in it. But I can tell you that neuroscience is very poorly contributive. This is our era. We are in the neuroscience era as well, so we deal with that. And if you look carefully, there is an interpretation of that all phenomena that have been associated with suicide are neuro or brain related. Of course, mind and behavior is in the brain. I'm a psychiatrist. I know a little bit about the brain. I'm not telling that the brain is not important there. But I think in some ways it focuses on other aspects. But if you look at that slide with the words I'm putting on the right, which are, what are the distal or predisposing factor? What are the developmental factors? A lot of people forget development, usually. What are the proximal or precipitating factor? What are the micro and the micro or macro? I'm sorry for my French English. Factors, and what is the status of epigenetic factors? You have two ways of seeing epigenetics. Either you see it as a genetic way of speaking about epigenetics, or a developmental way, or an environmental way of speaking about epigenetics. My view, but of course it's also my work, so maybe I have a bias in myself, and we all have bias. Even if we try to avoid that, the life is biased anyway. So I'm more with development and environmental factor. But I think that way of classifying things might be more interesting than trying to find whatever region in the brain. So what do we know from school shooting? Because school shooting is an example of what happens when you do mass killing, and school shooting is an older phenomenon. So we did with the French, actually it's also a military, because I have a lot of military psychiatrists coming in my department to learn about child and adolescent psychiatry. And it's, you have studies, it's mainly the public is adolescent and young adults, although there might be differences between the two, but anyway. And when you look at school shootings, you see 70% of the perpetrators usually suicide themselves. So it's not exactly the same phenomenon that we are talking about, although it's also mass killing. Another interesting way, so just the method to study risk factor of school shooting, usually it's psychiatric assessment of the perpetrator, it's profiling because you have police data that you can, you know, profile in characteristic about the people perpetrating school shootings. You have machine learning from a very big murder database, and you have also the context and risks of outbreak. So when you look at that, you have the list of the risk factor. I will not go in detail into that, but I just want to make a link here about the clinical aspects. And in many cases, you find acute depression that is comorbid with school shooting, and maybe that's why they suicide themselves after the school shooting. But you also have a number of factors that we are going to talk about a little bit later, but the way they have experience in life, social isolation, they have been bullied by others, you have societal factors as well, use of drug, history of abuse, family, history of psychiatric condition, and dysfunction. Okay, so is adolescent changing? This is a huge topic, so I'm not going to embrace the whole topic. I just want to mention 3 points here. First, what is called the Y and Z generation, you know about that. The second thing is about media propagation. This is a huge phenomenon today. And about bullying, and especially now the existence of cyberbullying, which is not the bullying I knew when I was a child at school. And I'm not that old, although every year I'm 1 year old more. Okay, so you know about the web revolution, and the web revolution has very interesting aspects in terms of society. It's good for education, for learning, and things like that. But it has also negative aspects that we have to deal with, like the risk of dependence. I'm not so sure it's dependence, but this is a whole debate. But lack of self-regulation, and more importantly, maybe, the body exploration during child development, which is lacking in many youth today, because they just stay, you know, seated at their computer or their laptop and computer, whatever. So one very interesting things in terms of social interaction, it's that now youth, they interact with people that they would not have met in the real world. And this is very important, and in the example of Breivik that was given today, it was very well explained that he started to have an identity, I mean a social identity, when he was with, you know, World of Warcraft playing, if I understood the point made earlier. So it's becoming a tool for identity creation. And us, as adults, because we are all adults, we have not been through that. So it's very difficult for us to imagine, although we can have rationality, I read papers, I know about that, I'm intelligent, I can tell, but we can't feel it the way adolescents feel it today. Okay, about the media effect, this is very, although it's a very low odds ratio, because it's only an increased risk of 0.3 or 0.2, but all the models goes the same way, and for 15 days you have an increase of school shooting or mass killing when you have a mediatic effect. This has been measured and modelized very carefully. And as media is everywhere, so a very short effect size, I mean small effect size can be, has consequences. And another, which has political implication that have never been applied, at least in the US, because they are debating on that, there is a clear correlation between firearm ownership and a negative correlation with gun law legislation. This is true worldwide. So another point I want to make about media, it's about bullying. Because we know that bullying has an impact on the development of personality, of anxiety, depression, somatization, whatever, a lot of symptoms. And it's correlated with modification during adolescence in the brain. But what is very new is the fact that now we have also cyberbullying. These are very recent papers showing an increase of suicide after cyberbullying, which means that adolescents today, they don't need to meet people to feel rejected or bullied. You know, the impact on the internet on them is so strong. If I have many, we all of us have this kind of email telling we are that and that, but we don't read them. We just, you know, spam them and whatever. But they don't, because they are in it from the very early age. So some of them are very affected by that. Okay, should we define a new era? I will, again, I'm not a sociologist. I'm just, you know, digging here and there some ideas that speaks to me from what I see from the clinical ground. I will take 3 points. The conspiracy era, which is very strong, and it's powerful by the mediatic effect, actually. This idea of contradiction between local culture and worldwide culture, which we are sometimes, as Occidental, we simplify this idea that worldwide culture would benefit to the people or humankind, but I'm not sure about that. I think that there is a lot of struggle between local culture and globalization that we need to carefully insist on. And the last point, as we are most of us scientists, or even I don't consider myself as a scientist, but anyway, I think for many people, although we consider that we are maybe the most intelligent and we try to think well, but for many people, science today may serve insanity. And we need to be careful about that. And it's an old etiquette debate in science. It was introduced by physicists, you know, when they thought about the nuclear bomb very early in the mid-century. But it's true also for biology. It should be true also for biology. So I will comment about that. So the conspiracy era, this is a recent paper that has reviewed a number of studies, or no, maybe this one, yes, it was, I don't remember if it's a review or not. Anyway, so the conspirational ideation is the tendency of individual to believe that events and power relations are secretly manipulated by a certain clandestine group or organization. And you have some examples, you know, 7% of the Americans, which is a lot, thinks that we never go to the moon. And this was a whole manipulation. In my field, autism, it's very common in the public to believe that MMR in English, it's rubella, how do you say that? Sorry, mumble?
Mumps, measles, rubella.
Thanks. Vaccination is associated with autism, up to 20% of the people. And, you know, 20% of the people, it's not only people with intellectual disability or whatever. So it's very, very common. You know, we have heard this year about the climate change conspiracy as well. Okay. About the new era, I like that paper. It was published years ago in Science about this idea that culture is driven by some, you know, macro forces, which here is tight and loose culture. And what was very striking, they had interviewed, you know, thousands of people around the world to have an idea of how people see their society as tight or loose in terms of collective organization and belief. So this is the score on the left here. But the very interesting, they tried to correlate these numbers as a dimension with some very macro data from UN organization, economic global organization and whatever, and look at the positive correlation and the negative correlation. It's very obvious how this drives culture as well. And although it's a model, it's based on some experiment from comparison, but it's very interesting to see that in this kind of models, because now you are also doing models and computational models about culture as well, so it's very interesting. But another dimension which is honor in culture, and as you know, each culture has its own idea of what is honor and whatever, but it's interesting to see that honor culture survive when authority is low, even in thought environments. That usually honor culture are very linked to aggressive culture and are mutually dependent, and that both culture are eliminated when institutions are reliable. And I think that this kind of principles may have political implication when you try to imagine that our democracy can be applied just like this. You know, you put a button and you say, okay, now we came here and we give you the democracy, but if you have no organization an institution that the people can rely on, it doesn't work as simply as we may imagine. Okay, and the last point is about, I'm sorry this slide is in French because I had no time to change it in English, but I just want to make this point. As a child psychiatrist, I work a lot with people doing, you know, assistive procreation and whatever the situation actually. But here on the middle in red, you have the circle of what is life for, I mean, most culture. You have a father, you have a mother, and more or less they make love, so there's sexuality, you have procreation, you have the filiation, and you have something that goes around. But now with science, you can change it. And these were, in most religion and culture, these were invariant. You have temporal invariant. You have the mother, you know always who is your mother, at least if you have this information. You can lose the information, but we have an approximation that is very strong between gender and sex, okay? And you know that you also have a transgenerational affiliation. But these invariants now, science can serve them to change them, because as you know, we have an gender identity, not only sex, and you can change it now, and it's even human rights. We talked about human rights, and why not? I'm not the one who has to judge what is right or not, but this is important to think about. And about procreation now, grandmother can become mothers. You can die and have children. This was a recent case where, you know, the sperm was in a fridge, the guy died, and the woman asked for the sperm of the died husband to have a child. And it was possible. And you have a lot of things, actually. You can change sex. We are studying, you know, children from fathers that actually are women transgender to male. They get married and they have children. Of course, it's not their own sperm because they are fertile, so it's a gift of sperm from. But this, I mean, 30 years ago, this was simply unquestionable. But this is a research topic today. So, in terms of religion, of culture, in some way, science serves insanity. So, people are very defiant to scientists these days. I mean, not here, maybe in the room, but when you go outside, you can hear about it. Okay, who are the French joining DAESH? I have 5 minutes late, so I need to go fast. Okay, so there were 3 eras. I don't want about, I won't talk about lone wolf killer, but it's not the point for DAESH, at least in France, okay? And so I will skip that. So we have 2 eras. The first era, which is profile 1. So most youth experienced some kind of family or psychosocial risk, and they were in mostly neighborhood. And this is the case of those who did, you know, November attempt in Paris, even if they came from Belgium, but it's the same profile. And you've heard about callous and emotional traits, disruptive behavior, and social hopelessness. The second era, which is much more strongly, actually, it's the fact that you have profile outside the Islam world, from people that have nothing to do with Islam in the family, and you have many girls, and actually in the kids that and the adolescents that Dunia had studied with her group, 60% of girls, which is a lot. So maybe instead of talking, I'm going to show you some profile, or maybe I need to put. Sorry. This is the same guy, yeah? Oh. Sorry, you don't. For those who understand French, anyway, it was in Arabic, so you have the translation. But I'd like you to hear this guy. I'm going to have it twice because he's now working on deradicalization, but he was radicalized in England, actually, in UK.
Ce sont d'ailleurs en général les personnes les plus sensibles qui sont vulnérables. Ceux qui ne contrôlent pas leurs émotions, ceux qui veulent agir pour changer le monde. Moi, c'est comme ça que j'ai été radicalisé. On s'est servi de mes émotions, de ma compassion, de ma colère, pour les retourner contre moi.
Okay. And this one is very interesting. This is a girl, French girls. And
ils sont venus me parler sur Facebook. Ils ont vu que je voulais faire aide-soignante pour aider les autres dans les pays musulmans. Puis après, ils m'ont parlé de religion en me disant que j'étais l'élu. Il faut que j'aille aider ces pauvres Syriens. Voilà, il faut que j'aille mourir en martyr. C'est la seule issue. Et au début, c'était que des hommes. Après, c'était des femmes aussi qui s'y mettaient.
Quand tu parles, tu mets toujours ta main dans ta bouche.
Listen carefully the way he speaks. Very slow.
Ça, je le sais. Les filles comme ça.
They use hypnosis techniques, actually.
Je te dis, t'es une perle. Donc reste comme t'es.
Gratification.
Et juste augmente ta force et tout. Reste comme t'es sinon. Parce que t'es machallah. Dans tout ce que tu fais, t'es bien. Continue comme ça. Baisse pas les bras avec tes parents, avec ta famille. Alors, le voit.
Isolation for the
Dans tous les cas, je suis là pour toi. Tu veux te marier à quel âge?
18. Toi?
Moi, le plus vite possible. C'est qui la princesse?
Moi?
Okay, and then she says yes about waiting and being the princess of the guy who is talking to her. She doesn't know what is expecting her there, but that's the way it works on the web and by telephone, actually. Okay, so this is just to give you a recent paper that has analyzed 12 cases that are in jail, actually. So they are mainly on the first profile, but you find the diversity of their trajectories here. And the psychiatrists that expertise them try to have 3 types of personality. I will not comment on that. Okay, so the mechanism to catch them, I will go very fast on that. It's not really socioeconomic factor. This has been shown in a large study in UK. But, okay. Oh, here in France, we have this way of seeing things like in sectarian processes. And this idea is that you create this culture of the group and you try to have the people be completely in the group with no individuality. And this process usually, so the vulnerability factor, we know them actually, and the process, I will show you what Dunia Bouzar has proposed, is something that has several steps. That's, you know, they are not completely separated and chronologically organized because they adapt with the people they are trying to catch. But you have the isolation is always there. The subject individuality is destroyed. At some points, there is a need to express support to the DAESH ideology, whatever the reason behind. And, of course, dehumanization, and it's a factor that has been described already this morning, is very important in their way. So this is the kind of method she has defined that have been done after hundreds of testimony of people that have been involved but that were coming back or stopped just before the border by the group. So about individuality and the destruction of individuality, prior belief, it's affective, affiliative, and familial. It's all of them. Expressing to support to Daesh, this is the very perverse attitude because for many of them, it's not about religion, it's not about, sometimes it's for helping people. They really believe that they go there for helping people, which is irrational for most of us, but it's the way they think. Okay, and the dehumanization, as I said, it was very well expressed this morning. Just I want to show you another case about hypnosis. I have only 2 videos. Next. Because some children, they are on hypnotic attitudes when they are very young. And listen to that. So it's not hypnosis, it's trance. But trance and hypnosis is about the same. This is in Pakistan, actually. And you believe that you have a lot of Muslim kids there. But listen to the interview.
Il y a encore 1 heure d'école, après la prière, celle de la nuit. Mais je ne comprends pas, ces enfants parlent arabe? Non, ces enfants ne parlent pas arabe.
They don't speak Arab, the kids. They are all foreign kids, you know, from the fighters that you have there, that are sent then to be the next generation.
Qu'est-ce que tu veux faire quand tu seras grand?
Le djihad.
Contre qui?
Les infidèles.
Si je deviens martyr, je serai immortel.
So, brief conclusion. These are the criteria, and maybe we can think about it, about the E syndrome that was proposed by an old child psychiatrist in France, Philippe Parquet. Although it's 2014, but it's just because they came back to his work about sectarian processes recently, and he already listed some risk factor, because I think that one of the difficulty of medicalization in that topic is the fact that we are confounding medicalization and the individualization of risk factor group, and which is not exactly the same, because you can belong to a risk group and not be medicalized as a syndromic disease or whatever. So what can we do? This is the list of ideas that comes out, but I will insist on group support because, you know, group is very important in that topic. Family therapy, at least for the youngest one, and maybe hypnosis. And this is the guy that was...
Ousmane, 22 ans.
Okay, now he worked as an
inquiétants.
educator to de-radicalize others. Okay, you recognize him. Okay, he used symmetrical posture, exactly like in hypnosis.
So, Ousmane,
Bon, Ousmane, il faut qu'on parle un peu. Je me suis laissé dire que quelque chose te tracassait en ce moment. Raconte-moi un peu.
Voilà, pacing, no.
Je suis un peu en colère à cause de ce qui se passe en Syrie. Ça me donne envie de casser quelque chose. Vous savez, comme une canette qu'on broie avec la main.
So, if you had a choice,
Imagine que Bachar el-Assad où l'un de ses sbires entrait dans la salle. Tu ferais quoi?
Je les détruirais. En fait, je crois que je leur arracherais le cœur.
Tu crois qu'un vrai musulman ferait ça? Une chose que nous enseigne notre religion et notre prophète.
Okay, this was my point for today. Thank you.